So we are in Torah, uh, in the Torah Pashat Vayishalach, from the word shlach, which means to send out, right? To send out. And we read in Parashat Vayishalach, in fact, it's about now Yaakov coming back to the land. He's had a spat with his father-in-law, Lavan, who chased him and came to the Golan, and he made a pact with him and he said, okay, I cannot destroy you, because if I destroy you, I'm going to destroy my grandchildren as well as my two daughters. So go in peace and carry on. And moreover, God had told Lavan, don't touch Yaakov. So that is done, dusted, and it's over. And Lavan goes back to Padan Aram. Vayishalach now, Yaakov is entering the land, but he has to deal with surmountable troubles. It's not easy coming into the land. It's not easy coming into God's promise. It's not easy deciding one day that I am going to leave the world behind and start following Jesus or following Yeshua or start becoming holy or more active in the church and doing all these kind of things. You know, when you start coming into the kingdom, operating in the kingdom, start doing things for the kingdom, and you're entering into the land per se, you're going to be met with surmountable problems because the enemy is going to come at you like a wall, like a huge tidal wave, and he's going to overwhelm you. And if you're not strong enough, if you're not rooted enough, you're not grounded enough, you're going to be overwhelmed. And this is where I think most people tend to look at life and say, okay, I've got nothing to do in life now. Let's become holy. Let's follow God. I've run my course in life and and a whole lot of stuff. And when they hit roadblocks, then faith totters a little from here to there, and then questions asked, and you tend to lose a little faith. But yes, most important is that we need to be rooted, we need to be grounded in the Word, in the Torah, and faith, as we studied before, is not intellectual capacitation of your brains. It's not a feeling. It's not something that I have to develop. Faith is all pervasive. It is a lifestyle that is downloaded into your being, and you live faith. You live faith. Okay. So this Torah portion is about Yaakov entering into the land, and now he's hit and he realizes that it's only going to be uphill, it's only going to be a huge task from the onwards. So therefore he knows, he understands. And the biggest challenge that he's going to face is his opposite. What is his opposite? His twin brother Esav. Because Esav is the complete diagonally opposite to Yaakov. Now we may look at Esav in such a way and say, okay, Esav is he's bad and he's God has rejected him, because the Torah says in Obadiah also and Micha, and Yaakov I have loved and Esav I have hated, and all this goes on even Isaiah and Jeremiah. But to understand the Torah of Yaakov, we must also understand the Torah of Esav. Yeah. To understand the Torah of Yaakov, we must understand the Torah of Esav also. Now, Esav, in many ways, we've done this before, represents a Jew who has left off being Jewish. Because he's the twin brother of Yaakov, right? He's the son of Yitzhak. He's the son of Isaac. How can he not be Jewish? One twin brother is Jewish, the other twin brother is not Jewish. Not possible, right? That two twins. Okay, I can still understand brothers who are separated by years. But when they're twins, both are Jewish. So Esav represents a Jewish person who's no more Jewish, or considered no more Jewish. So bear with me when I keep talking Torah, I keep talking many different levels of Torah. So this explanation, this midrash is on a certain level, and the next level I can probably talk about. It may seem to contradict what I'm saying today, but it's not. So there are different levels of interpretation of the Torah. But Yaakov has a problem. The problem is the other side of himself, that is Esav. So therefore, as he enters into the land, Vayishalach Yaacov Malahakim Liepanav El Esav Akiv Eradza Seir Sede Edom. And he sent Yaakov Malahakim, and he sent messengers before the face of Esav, his brother, to the land of Seir. Okay, it says Aradza Seir, to the land of Seir, and says Sadeh, the pastures, the green grass, Sadeh, the green tufts of land of Edom. Now, Esav is Edom, Edom is Esav. You'll have to understand this. Okay, he is synonymous with Edom, and Edom means something about Adam, which means red. Okay. We read also somewhere in one of the prophets, in Isaiah, I think, Isaiah prophesies and says, "Who is this who's coming from Bozrah with his garments stained with red?" And Bozrah is in Edom. Is in Edom. It is I, the Lord, for I have trampled the winepress in my fury. He has destroyed Edom in his fury. And in Obadiah, also Obadiah or Obadiah, God says, Edom shall be, it will be completely destroyed. It will not exist anymore. Let's open a little of Obadiah. It's in the Haftarah in any case. Of Vayera, Lech Lecha, okay, Yetzer Hara. It's Vayishalach. Obadiah chapter 1, verse 1 to 21. The Chadzon Obadiah, Ko Amar Adonai Yihye Le Edom. This is the vision that Obadiah seen of the Lord that gave him about Edom. We have heard tidings from the Lord, and among the nations an envoy has been sent. Kumi, arise, let us rise up against her to do battle. Behold, I have made you small among the nations, you are exceedingly despised. Your wanton heart has seduced you, you who dwell in the clefts of the rock, whose habitation is high, who says in his heart, who can bring me down to earth? Though you ascend as high as the eagle and place your nest among the stars, from there I will bring you down. This is the word of the Lord. Is there any doubt that on that day, the words of the Lord, I will cause the wise men of Edom to be lost, and discernment from the fountain of Esav? Right? Over there, chapter 1, verse 8. And discernment from the mount of Esav. Your mighty ones to the south will be smashed, so that every man from Esav's mountain will be cut down through slaughter. For your violence to your brother Yaacov. Shame will cover you, and you will be cut down forever. Because of the day you stood aloof, the day strangers plundered his wealth, foreigners entered the gates, and they cast lots in Yerushalayim, you were like one of them. You should have not gazed on that day of your brother, the day he was exiled. You should not have rejoiced over the children of Judah on the day of their destruction. You should not have spoken arrogantly on the day of distress. You should not have entered the gate of my people on the day of their disaster. Even you should not have gazed upon its misfortune on the day of its disaster. You should not have put your hands on its wealth on the day of disaster. You should not have stood at the crossroads to cut down the refugees. You should not have imprisoned its survivors on the day of distress. So basically, let me give you a history of what Obadiah is talking about here. Now, all the prophets have only one reason to sit and prophesy. Do you know what the reason is? All the prophets are meant to prophesy regarding the galut, the exile, and the return of Israel to the land. Beat it. That is the co-prophetic voice of the Old Testament. From Jeremiah, from Isaiah, Obadiah, Malachi, which ends in Malachi, Nahum, every single prophet is only prophesying about Israel going into exile and the hope of coming back. Any other way of reading the prophetic books and applying the prophetic books to your own personal use is gross error. Yes, God can instruct us some kind of instructions from the prophets, that's true, but applying what God spoke to Israel to the prophets, it does not work on you. Daniel was in exile. He spoke about the end of days. Jeremiah prophesied about the coming exile. Isaiah much before that. He warned them. And then all Nehemiah and all these other, all of them were got to do with the galut, the exile of Israel, and coming back to the land, friends. So here, Obadiah is telling Edom, in Israel's weakest place, when it was plundered by Nebuchadnezzar, when the temple was destroyed, the gold, the rocks, everything was plundered and taken into Babylon. The first temple of Shlomo, King Shlomo Amalek. What did Edom do? Edom stood on the sidelines and laughed. Edom, the brother of Israel, the brother of Jacob, the brother of the Jewish people, joined the nations and Nebuchadnezzar and looted his own brother. They should have helped. You see, God is so just. And this is what we don't understand of God. If I see God is punishing me and setting my life right, nobody has the right to stand up and to condemn me. This is what we do all the time. God is setting my life right, setting your life right. I do not have the right to condemn you and say this is what you've done bad, that's why God is punishing. No, it's my duty to show kindness and to give comfort in your distress. I am no one to judge you for what God is doing in your life. And God expects this from us. And this is Edom. This is Esav. Now, when I'm bringing all this into perspective of Parashat Vayishalach, Yaacov prophetically is looking millennia ahead and understands his brother so well. He understands the nature of his brother. Esav is not called a man of the field for nothing. He is the wisest of the world. He's the most cunningness. He's full of cunning. He's articulate with his speech. He can sell you anything. He's a superb negotiator. He knows the ways of this world. You cannot fool Esav. He will get what he wants, albeit even if he has to use force, slaughter, kill. This is Esav. This is the people of the world. Try and do business in the world also, and you'll realize what I'm talking about. That is Esav. He's the man of the field. Yaakov is not the. Yaakov is the person of the tent who sits in his tent studying Torah, raising a spiritual level of God. But Esav is the man of the field. He's looking at Yaakov and saying, what are you sitting and studying every day? What do you think you're very holy, is it? How many times have we seen this in our own lives? Right? Oh, you become very holy nowadays. You go to church. What? Oh, yeah. That is Esav. So anyway, let's get. I'm just giving you a little historical background as to how Yaakov is prophetically looking ahead, looking much ahead. Remember last Torah portion when we studied, and we studied that in that Sulam Yaakov, in that dream that Yaakov had, God filtered down, downloaded the entire role of Israel. Right? We're all aware of that. He knew what Israel is going to be. He knew what the 12 tribes are going to accomplish. He named that place Bethel. Okay, and he knew that he promises Neder God. He gives God a vow saying, I will build a place of habitation for you, and therefore my children will be a kingdom of priests and royal priesthood, a nation of priests for you, Lord. So now, because of this, Yaakov has an understanding that how do I negotiate Esav so God's promise through him in the land would survive. The fear is not only him, but beyond him. The fear is beyond him because he's not dealing with a person, he's dealing with an entity, he's dealing with a spiritual force, the reckoning of that spiritual force that he's fighting a spiritual battle. And how does he fight a spiritual battle? We will see. Okay. Vayishalach Yaacov mala'akim lepanav el Esav akiv aradza seir sadeh, to the fields of Edom. Right? To the fields. Edom. Vayetzav otam le'mor ko tomrun la'adonai le'esav ko amar avdecha Yaakov im Lavan garti ve'ahakar ad ata. And he charged, he commanded his messenger saying, when you meet Yaakov, when you meet Esav, say these words to him. So says your servant Yaakov, I have sojourned with Lavan and have lingered until I've survived till now. I have acquired ox and donkey and flock and servant and maidservant, and I'm sending to tell my Lord to find favor in your eyes. Now, let's ask ourselves a question. Why is Yaakov saying this? Why is he trying to prove something to Esav? Right? It sounds like Esav is proving something to Esav, right? Esav, see this, please understand. I have survived with Lavan for so long. You know how Lavan is. You know what a crooked man Lavan is. I have survived Lavan. I've overcome. So in many ways, now Yaakov is accomplished because he's overcome the world, because he's jumping from one crooked person to another. In many ways, he's been a victor and he's overcome the world. He's overcome Lavan, and Lavan has given up, and he's out of Lavan, and now he's come to hit his brother, because this is another roadblock he has to accomplish in his life. But let's ask yourself a question. Why is Yaakov saying all this? And look at his words carefully. He says, Ko amar avdecha Yaakov im Lavan garti, from the word ger, garti, ve akher adata, vayehi li shor, ve chamor, zon, ve eved, ve shifka, ve eshlak, lahagid, לאדוני lamadzochen, lamadzachen be'enainecha. I have survived, I've sojourned as a ger with Laban, and I've survived, and I've acquired ox and donkey and flock and servants and maidservants, and I'm sending to tell my Lord to find favor in your eyes. Now, put this into perspective, this is what he's doing. The first thing Yaakov has to address is to make sure that Esav realizes that although Yaakov supposedly or actually took his birthright and took his inheritance, now he's coming with all his wealth and he's telling Esav, see, I am successful in my own right. I have not come empty handed. I have not come like a beggar to claim what I have taken from you already. I am not come to challenge you. Do you remember he took his birthright 21 years ago? Esav came with 400 men because he thought that Yaakov is come empty handed and coming now to take that birthright which he stole from him. So Yaakov now is saying this. He says, see, listen, tell my brother that I was with Laban, I overcame, I survived, and I've come with my own wealth. See, brother, see, I have all this, but it's not what I have asked you. It's not your birthright. I've not got this by your birthright. So please understand where I am. I'm not challenging you for that now. You're understanding what I'm saying? It's very important. So the angels returned to Yaakov saying, we came to your brother Esav, and moreover, he's heading towards you with 400 men are with him. Now Yaakov panics because he's realized that his entry into the land now is a kind of statement to Esav saying, I took his birthright. Now I've come to claim it. So Esav is up in arms. He's collecting 400 men. He's going to come and he's going to destroy us. How do I negotiate this situation? How do I negotiate this situation? It's brilliant. If you're looking, today we're going to learn the Pashat of the text, the absolute literal of what the Torah is telling us. But it's still very fundamental, it's still really profound. Okay. Vayare Yaakov meod vayatzar. And greatly, with great trepidation and fear, Yaakov. And it distressed him. It really distressed Yaakov. Because he thought, that he's going to be able to negotiate with his brother and prove to his brother that, what I done 21 years ago does not really stand. I've done everything on my own. I don't need your birthright and your wealth and what is given to you. So he divided the people with him and the flocks and the cattle and the camels into two camps, Machanaim, right? And he said, if Esav comes to one camp and strikes it, then the remaining camp shall be a refuge. And then Jacob exhorted and he prayed to God. He said, Vayomer Yaakov Eloha Avi Avraham Ve'Eloha Avi Yitzchak Adonai HaOmer Elai Shuv Le'aratzcha Ulemoledetcha U'aiteva Imacha. God of my father Abraham, God of my father Yitzchak, Lord who said to me, return to your land that you were born in and to your birthplace, and I will do good with you. I have been Katanti, says, I've become very small by all the kindness that you have shown me and by all the truth that you have done to your servant. For with my staff I crossed this Jordan, and now I have become two camps. He says, I have to divide for survival. So if I don't divide for survival, none of us may survive because I'm greatly distressed with in this great negotiation coming to the land. And you know, friends, I'll tell you, during the Second World War, when hordes of Jewish people were coming back to the land, to Israel, they had it very, very tough. There were ships that left Germany, there were ships that left France and Europe. During the peak of the war, they were escaping from the Second World War and from the Holocaust. British ships landed on the coast of Haifa, on the coast of Ashkelon, Haifa, and all these places, and they were turned around. Britain never allowed the Jews to enter into the land. They turned the ships and they sent them back to Germany. This is what Edom done. This is what Esav done to his own brother. Send them back. And who was responsible for that? Who was in charge of the land in 1947? It was under the British mandate. Britain refused the Jews to go back to their own land. It was a fight. Ultimately, it took General Allenby much earlier to drive the Turkish hordes out of the land, okay, and take over then called Palestine or Palestine, which was a superfluous name given to that place because it was so called Palestine because the Romans gave that name Palestine because they wanted to remove all identity of Jewishness out of the land. It was the Romans who changed the name of Israel to Palestine, and it stuck from then. When Emperor Nero changed the name from Israel to Palestine, he wanted to make Jerusalem the capital of the Eastern Roman Empire and called it Elena Capitolina, and he built a great fortress on the Temple Mount, and a whole lot of nonsense was done by Rome. And that name Palestine stuck from then. And there's still today, people are still taking advantage of the name Palestine. But it's not Palestine. The Philistines were destroyed during King David's time. So how can you call it Palestine? This was vengeful act by the Romans to give that name Palestine, even till the British mandate. So even the British mandate also still said Palestine. So you can just imagine what is happening. And the Jews had a very difficult time entering into the land. The Jews were coming in hordes, but they were not allowed to enter into the land. They had to negotiate and negotiate and negotiate. Ultimately, when they finally came in 1947, the document was signed by the American president, okay, and Israel was carved out, and then they were allowed to enter into the land, and a small portion in the Shephelah, which is modern day Yaffo and Tel Aviv, or Jaffa, which is called Yaffo, and Tel Aviv, and Israel started from there, and now it's grown into the nation that you know today. Okay. And then General Allenby, basically handed over and to the Jews, and then encampments and everything spread over there. But what did the British mandate do then? They handed over a certain portion, and they left maximum of the portion to the rest of the people over there. People from Syria, from Egypt, from North, from Iraq, they all came and settled over there. And if you look at the ancient snaps of 100 years ago, the land of Israel was empty. There was not even an ant moving in that place. But today, suddenly they sprouted up with so many Arab people around there. Where have they come from? Where have they come from? So there's been a lot of thing going. But what I'm trying to tell you is that Esav has played a tremendous role in hindering constantly Yaakov to come into the land. So whatever we read of Yaakov, whatever prayer is being done by Yaakov is very prophetic in its nature. Very prophetic in nature. Anyway, then he says, then he prays to God. He says, I've divided two camps. Hadzaleni na meyad akhi meyad Esav. Hadzaleni, save me, please. Save me, please, from the hands of my brother Esav. You know, you talk a heartfelt conversation among Jewish people. I'll tell you, the Jews and the Arabs fight today. They slaughter each other, they're stabbing each other in Israel, and they're doing everything. But at the end of the day, I'll tell you this. The Jew will always prefer an Arab to a Christian. Why? Because for many, many centuries, the Jews and the Arabs lived together. Do you know a Jew is allowed to pray in a mosque? And an Arab is allowed to pray also in the synagogue, but that does not happen. Why is a Jew allowed to pray in a mosque? Because for a Jew, that mosque is a sanctified place. It's without idolatry. When they come into the Roman Catholic Church, they see all the lovely sculptures and this and that, and so it's very it's a very unkosher place for the Jew. But a Jew, at the end of the day, that brotherhood is still very, very strong with them. Now, don't get me wrong when I'm saying this, that when I'm talking about Esav in a very negative sense, he is still Yaakov's brother. Esav represents the Yetzer Hara, he represents the evil inclination inside a person. Yaakov represents the Yetzer HaTov, the good inclination inside a person. He represents me wanting to be good. I want to overcome like Yaakov, but I'm also Esav. I'm obstinate. I'm in the world. I want to dominate the world. I'm a man of the field. I'm like, I'm the super duper conqueror of this world. That is Esav. But there's the other side of me which says, I want to elevate myself. I want to go closer to God. I want to do good things. I want to do tzedakah and charity, and that is Yaakov. They're the two alter egos of a human being. So now, what is Yaakov fighting? What is Yaakov fighting? Yaakov is trying to overcome that side of him that needs to be subdued. That needs to be subdued. So he's praying, although he's saying, my brother, Lord, save me from my brother, because if he is not empowered to overcome the Yetzer Hara, then Esav is going to flourish. And the promises of God are not good, but God is faithful, right? Rescue me now, please, from the hand of my brother, from the land of Esav, for I fear him lest he come and strike me, mother and children. Why mother and children? Because this is the future of the Jewish nation. He's looking, because now this problem is bigger than him, as I said before. And you had said, O Lord, I will surely do good with you, and I will make your offspring like the sand of the sea, which is too numerous to be counted. He spent the night there, Then he took from that which had come into his hand a tribute to Esav his brother, the she goats 200 and he goats and 20, and he takes out all his goats and sheep and camels and donkeys, and he separates them and makes them into hordes, and he's sending them one after the other in hordes, like waves of things coming into Esav. And he put his servants in charge of each herd separately and said to his servants, "Go ahead of me and put a space between herd after herd." And he instructed the first one, saying, "When my brother Esav meets you and asks you, 'Whose are these and where are you from and what are you doing?' Tell them these belong to you, or these belong to your servant Yaacov. This is your servant Yaakov's. It is a tribute sent to my Lord to Esav, and behold, he too is behind us." So what's he doing? The two actions Yaacov is doing. One is he's trying to overcome that side of him that needs to be subdued, but he's trying to do it in the non-violent means. He's trying to do it in reasoning, in understanding, in reconciliation, right? He's trying his best to reconcile with that side of him. Okay? And but this does not work. And I'll tell you why it does not work. In this manner, and you shall say moreover to him, "Behold, your servant Yaakov is behind us." For he said, "I will wipe away his furious countenance with the tribute that precedes me." Let's read this in the Hebrew, okay? Ve'amartem gam hine avdecha Yaakov acharenu ki amar a kapara. A kapara. Panav ba mincha haholechet lepenai ve'achare ken eree panav ulai isa panai. What is the word that we came across there? A kapara. What is kapara? From the word Kippur, right? Yom Kippur. Kippur, kapara. So what is this word kapara doing here? Now I want you to understand something. The way this word Kippur or kapara is used biblically is very, very important. And I've done this before in the other thing, but I don't know how much you'll have grasped the concept of kapara. The normal understanding that we have is that we look at the blood that cleanses the sin, right? But if you look at it minutely, what does the blood do? The blood is the life of that being. And God accepts that payment of that life of that being, and that blood of that being now comforts the heart of God. So God now, in his heart, he reconciles that anger and he says, "I'm no more anger. I removed it away from me." It can even be a minka, it can be a gift. It can be a gift of gold, it can be a gift of silver, it can be a gift of this and that and that. All that can be given to God, and God can acquiesce his own conscience and say, "I forgive you, son. I forgive you, daughter." So kapura is something about God acquiescing and comforting himself and taking the load of his own heart and conscience towards you. But the highest level of kapura comes when there is a life that is involved in it, the blood. So the blood is accepted, and God has no choice now because it's got to do with life, right? It's not like gold and silver. So gold and silver, God can still say it's only gold and silver. I'm still not going to take this load off my chest. But when God sees blood and life, God says it's life. So you'll have to understand Kapora. You'll have to, very simple example. Your son and daughter is not, uh, your children have a problem with you and they storm off the house and they walk away, and for 5 years they don't uh, talk to you, and you don't want to talk to them for 5 years, right? You really don't want to talk to them, and they want to reconcile and they send messages and they send money and they give, but you are saying, I am not going to reconcile with my son or my daughter. That's it. That is it. No matter what they do. One day you get a phone call, the son is critically ill in the hospital on his deathbed. You will jolly well take the first flight and you will run to see your son. Why? Because it's a matter of life. No matter what you say, ultimately he's my son or he's my daughter. Leave it out. Leave the past. But at least before anything happens to my son, I should be there. That is Kapora. I want you to understand Kapora in its truest form. So he says out here, he says, maybe with all that I'm giving Esav, all that I'm selling Esav and making Esav comfortable by understanding that Esav, I may have taken your birthright, but I've not, see, this is mine. I've not taken it from you. I don't need it. I may have done something foolish then, but I'm not come to take anything from you, Esav. And this would acquiesce Esav, and he would quell the consternation and the, that defensive attitude that Esav has, and says, my brother really means that he is not taking my birthright. So this is what's happening, friends. What's he trying to do? He's trying to do kapora, nothing else. Okay, so he says, a kapara, panav, they minka. Maybe he'll get kapora to this minka, minka's gift. Minka, ha holechet la panav, ve'acharehen ere panav ulai isa panav. So that he will, look at this, that when I face him, perhaps he will, says, forgive me, but it says, isa panav, that he will lift his face. Now, lift his face. Where have you studied this before? Deuteronomy 6. May the Lord bless you and keep you. May the Lord cause his face to shine upon you. May he lift your countenance, lift your face, and give you shalom. Number 6. Yeah, number 6. Sorry. Tremendous. So we're seeing a picture of, so much. But my question is, why is Yaacov doing this to Esav? Who's Esav? Who is Esav? Now I'll tell you who Esav is. The Torah of Esav is not like the Torah of Yaacov. The Torah of Yaacov is about separation. Havdalah, separating light from darkness, separating the holy from the unholy, separating the Shabbat from the rest of the days. Right? All the Torah is about Yaacov, the Torah is about Havdalah, it's about separation. Purity, impurity, Havdalah, this, that's all about separation. But the Torah of Esav is not about separation. The Torah of Esav is about converting impurity to purity, making something bitter into sweetness. This is the difference between the Torah of Esav and the Torah. So we are looking at Esav and seeing all the impurities, but the power of Esav is the ability to convert bitterness into sweetness, to extract the impurities and to convert it into purity. Yaakov understands that, because Yaakov knows that Esav ultimately is the firstborn. The birthright actually is his. It's not his. But he's taken the birthright from Esav because Esav is not a pure vessel. enough to contain the light, the divine light. Or rather, Esav is not able to understand the intensity, the power of that light. Yaakov understands that light because he's studying. He is in that divine illumination and he's in that divine elevation all the time. So he understands that light. Esav is in the field. He's got that light inside of him. By potential, Esav is very, very great. He's much more greater than Yaakov. But he's not able to take that light and bring it into perfection. And this is where Yaakov is looking and he's saying, what are you doing with yourself, Esav? What are you doing? If you cannot handle it, give it to me, I will take it. This is Esav having the potential, Yaakov having the actuality. I want to be. Yaakov is, I want to be. Esav is, I am. But I don't understand, I don't realize it anymore. I don't understand, I don't realize it. I'm great, but I don't realize that I'm great. Yaakov understands the greatness, but he cannot be, he's falling short of it. Therefore, the Jew needs, when he looks at the Christian on the stage, and he looks at a Christian who's walking in the path of the Holy Spirit, and he's seeing that great miracles that are happening, and he's seeing the power of God's changing people's life, and deliverance happening and healings happening, and the Jew standing back and saying, oh, Esav. You understand what's happening between the two brothers? This is exactly what's happening. But Yaakov needs Esav. Because Esav must open his eyes and understand that I will only be the first, the birthright will only come into fruition to me if I understand who I am. Yaakov understands it, but Esav does not. So he is flirtatious with it. I sold my birthright. What have I got to do by being Jewish? Not interested. That's not interested. I'm going to go into the world. I'm going to live my life in the world. I'm going to, become very great, very big. I like myself. The difference between the two, it's very, very great. Okay, let's go a little ahead. Perhaps he will forgive me. Perhaps he will forgive me for taking his birthright and trying to take his birthright when he also was at his weakest point in his life. Yaakov is also no less. He done the same thing to Esav. And if you'll know the history as to why Yaakov actually, the story behind taking his birthright, then you will understand the full story, the full picture comes into, and I think you're getting a glimpse into this. Yaakov understands Esav to don't care for his birthright. This is my inheritance, I don't want it. You take it. But Esav needs to be rectified. Therefore, the word Esav, the name Esav is missing one yud. And that's the yud that Yaakov, Esav took in the womb of Rachel. And when Esav took the yud from Yeshua, he was left with Esav, and Esav became Yaakov. He took the yud from his brother, and he became Yaakov. And there was a reason why he took it, because he knew that Esav was not going to be able to live that kind of life. He was not interested. He was going to throw it away, throw that inheritance away. This is the divine play that's happening inside of them. So Yaakov takes it and he's struggling now to live it by separation, by Torah, by this. He's trying to his best to live it. But Esav already has the kind of potential of being, but he doesn't want it. So Yaakov is kind of jealous and he takes it from him. Okay. But Esav has to be rectified. Esav has to be rectified. Therefore, now to rectify Esav, you have to have Yeshua. Therefore, Yeshua today is not with Yaakov. He is with who? He is with Esav. He is with Christianity. He's not with the Jews. He had to be rejected of the Jews, so he is identified with Esav. And through Esav, he will rectify Esav inside out. He will bring Esav to perfection, and then Yaakov will recognize him, and the two will become one. This is a great play in the Torah, friends. This is a great play that God has given in the Torah, friends. If you are able to understand this in a real deep level of Torah, think about this. It's absolutely phenomenal. If Yeshua came and remained with only the Jewish people, Esav would not have been rectified. Esav has to be rectified. Therefore, Yeshua is with Esav right now. When he comes back, he changes Esav, then it becomes one with the Jew. So ultimately, we're all going to be one, Jew and Gentile friends. But the catalytic factor in between is Yeshua. So I'm saying this very confidently. The garments on Christianity is impure. It's defiled. We are vessels, kelim, that have tremendous potential divine light of Yeshua inside of us. But we don't know how to use it. We don't know how to bring it into perfection. The Jews looking at us and saying, what are you doing? In many ways, they're jealous. This is what Paul says. We have to, get that jealousy out of them. Okay, verse 23. And anyway, he got up that night and took his 2 wives and his 2 handmaids and 11 sons and crossed the ford of Yaacov. And he took them and he brought them across the stream and he brought across that which was his. And Yaakov was left alone. Right? Verse 25. Vayivater Yaakov lavdo vayi avak ish imo ad alot hasachar. And Yaakov was left alone, and a man wrestled with him. Ish, it says, a man wrestled with him till the break of dawn. Who is this man? Who is Yaakov fighting now? All this while, this is what I was explaining to you all. He's fighting none other than this, the angel of Esav. He has to be fighting the angel of Esav to overcome Esav spiritually first before he has to reconcile with his brother. We want to do things in our own way in the physical realm, but the solution is on the spiritual realm first. And each time you're struggling in your life with anybody or anything, any place or thing, is because you're fighting that spiritual entity. Yaakov is fighting the angel of Esav. The entity that belongs to Esav. Okay. And when he perceived that he could not overcome him, he struck the ball of his thigh bone, and the ball of Jacob's thigh bone became dislocated as he wrestled with him. And then he said, "Let me go, for dawn is broken." So the sages say, the angel wanted to go back. Why? Because of morning prayers in the heaven, the Shacharit prayers. He had to go. So then he said, I'm not going to let you go until you bless me. What is your name? Tell me. He says, why are you asking for my name? He said, no longer will it be said that your name is Yaacov, but Israel. For you have striven with the divine and men and have overcome. So you have to understand what's happening with Yaacov here. He's fighting a spiritual battle so he can live on the earth. He's overcoming, and until he never went through this entire process of overcoming this angelic being that represents Esav, Esav is not going to be in a conducive state to accept his brother. You see, let's see the head. Then he says, tell me your name. He says, why is it that you ask for my name? And he blessed him there. So Yaakov called the name of that place Peniel, or face of El, Peniel. For I have seen the divine face to face, yet my life was spared. The sun rose for him as he passed Penuel, and he was limping on his hip. Therefore, the children of Israel are not to eat the displaced sinew of the ball of the thigh bone till this day. Till now also, the thigh bone is not eaten by the Jewish people. And then chapter 30 says, Jacob raised his eyes and saw, and behold, Esav was coming with him with 400 men. So he divided the children among Leah, Rachel, and the two handmaids. He put the handmaids and the children in the front, and then Leah and her children. And last of all, he put Rachel and Joseph last. Right? He put Joseph last, right? And he went on ahead of them and bowed 7 times until he reached his brother. He bowed before his brother. After all, he's his elder brother, and he bowed 7 times, 7 times. And then Esav ran towards him, and he embraced him, and he fell upon his neck and kissed him, and they wept. They both wept. You see, this was not possible until Yaakov never overcame this spiritually. The battle was spiritual. The battle is always spiritual. Now, after all, when he seen his brother and they looked at each other after 21 years, they just broke down and they cried and they wept and they reconciled. And he raised his eyes and he saw the women and the children and he said, who are these two? Who are all of this? What is the meaning of goats and camels and this and the children, and who are these women? And then Esav realizes that his brother means what he's doing. He's not come here to challenge me for the birthright. He has so much of his own. So he's, this is where the kapora comes in place, and he's acquiesced about that full intensity of rage he had for his brother. So he knows now his brother's not going to challenge him. He's not going to try and rob his birthright all over again. So all that is history is gone. Forget it. It's over with. Then he said, the children whom God has given me graciously, given to your servant. Then the handmaids came forward and they with the children and they bowed down. Then Leah came forward with her children and they bowed. And after Joseph and Rachel came forward and they bowed. And he said, who is all this camp that I met to you? He answered, to gain favor of my Lord's eyes. And Esav said, I have plenty, my brother. What is yours, let it remain yours. Ultimately, it was about the birthright. Then Jacob said, please do not. If I have now found chen, matzah chen, if I have now found matzah chen in your eyes, then accept my tribute from me, inasmuch as I have seen your face, which is like seeing the face of a divine being. And you have been kapora, appeased by me. Isn't it amazing, friends? Absolutely amazing. Na mazati chen be'anecha Ulachakta minchati miyagdi ki alchen reati panecha ki reot pene Elohim itirazeni. Chakna et barki asher hubaat lecha ki chaneni Elohim veki eshli vayafatzari chak. Unbelievable, friends. It's such a simple story, actually. Nothing too great to think about, nothing too amazing to to get into. And I want to understand this. A lot of people ask me, what about this? And this is first understand the Pashat level. First understand the absolute level of what the Torah is speaking about. Understand the humanity level of the Torah, and everything will fall into place. Now is the interesting portion of it. Anyway, so he urged him, and he said, okay, come on, he accepted. And then he said, Esav tells Yaakov, he says, come on, let's travel and let us go, and I will walk with you. Verse 12. Vayomer nisa venalacha ve'elecha la negercha. He says, come and I will sojourn with you, I will walk with you. Let us be one together. Who's telling Yaakov this? Esav. But Esav has his conditions, he has his terms. Okay. Esav wants Yaakov to become Esav. Okay. Esav, I'm saying this again, Esav wants Yaakov to become Esav. But Yaakov is very, very focused. See what Yaakov says out here. He says, Vayomer elav Adonai Yodea ki hayaladim rabbim v'chadzon habakar alut elai u defakum yom echad mintu chol hadzon. But he said, my Lord knows that the children are small and tender, and the nursing flocks and the cattle are upon me, and they will drive. And if I drive them hard for one day, the flocks will die. I cannot move at your pace, Yaakov. You want to run, you want to sprint. Your ratza, your land, your rat zone is you want to conquer, you want to go conquering. The world is your field. I am not like that way. I can't be that way. I've got souls to take care of. If I go at your speed, I will not survive. None of us will survive. Let my Lord go ahead of his servant. I will make my way slowly at my own pace, according to the gate and the work that is before me, according to the malakha, as per the work, what I'm supposed to accomplish, I will come and I will reach you. So in other words, he's saying, Esav, you are presumably you're at a very higher level. You're at a very high level. Esav, I'll get there, but let me do it in the right way. I don't mind walking with you, but if you understand, then we will walk together. But you're not going to understand. Okay. Slow pace according to the gate of the work that is before me, and to the gate of the children, I will come to my Lord at Seir. I will come to you at Seir. Then Esav said, let me at least assign some of the people who are with me. And he said, to what purpose? Let me find favor in my Lord's eyes. So the two didn't agree. The Jew and the Christian didn't agree. Do they still agree in walking together till today? They don't. Esav is constantly wanting the Jew to become a Christian. Friends, that's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. All the Jew needs to do is to understand, to see Yeshua in Esav, and to understand what Yeshua is doing in Esav, that Yeshua is rectifying Esav to bring him to a level that he will be able. So the final goal is Yaacov and Esav becomes one in Yeshua. That's it. So Esav went back that day on his way to Seir, and Yaakov journeyed to Sukkot and built himself a house for his livestock. He made shelters, therefore he made sukkahs and shelters, and he called that name of the place Sukkot. And it says Yaakov came, Vayavo Yaakov Shalem Id. He came whole. He came unto the city of Shechem, Shalem, whole, full, complete, wholesome. The Bible is not. When you're reading that in the English, it says, I don't know what it says in the KJV, it must be saying something else. But when you're reading the Hebrew, it says, Vayavo Yaakov Shalem Id Shechem. He came in wholeness, in peace, on wholeness to Shechem. And this means something very, very great. Because the purpose of our lives is to be shalom, whole. That is why we get the word no, shalom aleichem, shalom, shalom. What do I mean by saying shalom? I mean to say, are you whole today? And your response traditionally would be, shalom, shalom, ani beseder. I am in order. Why am I in order? Because I'm unblemished in my soul today. My mind, my heart, my emotions, my body, it's all unified and in perfect calmness to serve God. I'm not angry in the morning. I'm not sad in the afternoon. And in the evening, I'm not depressed that I have to get drunk. That is not wholeness. Are you understanding what I'm saying? Shalom means to be compounded, whole, perpetually whole, constantly whole. That is shalom. So it says, and Yaakov came to Shechem whole. In the land of Canaan, upon his coming from Padan Aram, and he encamped before the city. And he bought a measure of field upon which he pitched his tent from the children of Hamor, Shechem's father, for 100 kesita. He set up an altar there and called it, God is the God of Israel. Shem Mitzbeach Vaikra Lo El Eloha Israel. He called it the God of Israel. So friends, we studied today Esav. We've studied Yaakov in a much deeper level. We've done this before, but today at a level that is more profoundly important to understand the difference between the two. There are tremendous difference between the two, but I want you to understand at the end of the day, they're one. They're not something that's going to be completely separate forever. Now, just as Esav is being rectified, so Yaakov also needs a whole lot of rectification at the same time, because they have not lived up to what they were supposed to live up to. And this is what Rav Shaul is constantly addressing in the New Testament. He says, circumcision means nothing, uncircumcision means nothing. All is required is about keeping the commandments of God. Why? Because the Jew now wants to become like Esav, and Esav is trying now understanding that I have to, do something and I have to become Jewish, and he's doing all the wrong things trying to become Jewish. So Paul is saying, what are you doing? None of you are knowing what you're doing. The Jew has sinned so badly that he's lost his Jewishness. Therefore, the circumcision has no value in him. Well, whereas the Gentile or Esav is becoming so righteous that his uncircumcision is just as good as the circumcision that a Jew is supposed to have. So then Paul is trying to put a middle ground and say, listen, you guys have got to understand what you're doing. So don't try and force either side to do what you're not supposed to do. All that is required, really, is following the commandments of God. But we have to start with separation, the Torah of Yaacov. Once we understand the Torah of Yaacov, we will understand the Torah of Esav later. So yes, Esav looks impure. Esav looks completely rejected of God. Esav looks destroyed. What's he going to say? It's not what you're reading. God's going to destroy Esav in its impurity. But inside out, he's going to rectify Esav. And the only way he can do that is if Yeshua is inside of Esav and he purifies and he cleanses Esav and he rectifies Esav. And now, then the activation of the Jewish people will come at a later time. He's put them on the shelf and said, you will wait there. The time has not come. I have to rectify Esav first. So praise God that Yeshua is with us and he's doing a wonderful thing. And he's going to rectify the world. Once the world is rectified, then the Jewish people are going to come into perspective. They're going to come into role, into the inheritance, into heritage friends. So this is all that we had to share. There's a lot more, but we cannot keep going in these Torah portions. And okay, until we meet next time, God bless each one of you all. Shabbat Shalom. Have a wonderful